We have breaking news. Now it is former CIA Director John Brennan. This afternoon, Brennan was referred to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution. Why is he being referred and who referred him? Those answers are coming up. Also today, he's fighting back, and I'm talking about former FBI Director James Comey. The former FBI director is now asking a federal court in Virginia to throw out the 2-count indictment lodged against him by a federal grand jury. We're going to have more on this in a moment. Plus, any minute, President Trump is set to kick off a Diwali celebration at the White House. Diwali, also known as the Festival of Lights, is one of the most important and widely celebrated holidays in India. We're going to bring you to that event live as soon as the president starts speaking. But first, now it is Vice President Vance's turn. Flying overnight, he arrived in Israel today to do what he can to encourage and maintain peace. He spoke alongside the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Here's what both had to say.
What we've seen the past week gives me great optimism the ceasefire is going to hold. And if we get from where we were a week ago to a long-term, durable peace between Israel and Gaza, there are going to be hills and valleys. There are going to be moments where it looks like things aren't going particularly well. But given that, and given the history of conflict, I think that everybody should be proud of where we are today.
We were working on would kind of have two phases to it. The first phase was obviously getting the live hostages out. We're currently making progress on the hostages, the bodies that are still there. Both sides are transitioning from 2 years of very intense warfare to now a peacetime posture.
Also speaking with Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Witkoff met with freed hostages and their families. One of those hostages being welcomed home by his community, Governor of the Binyamin Regional Council, Yisrael Gans, greeting Avi Nantan, or his father says during his son's captivity, he was handcuffed to a 5-foot cage in a tunnel. Today, though, he celebrated freedom. He received a hero's welcome in his hometown, or celebrating with fellow Israelis, waving the Israeli flag. Hundreds gathering for this day, which is more than 2 years in the making. Meanwhile, Israel is still waiting for Hamas to keep its word under the agreement and return the remains of 15 hostages. Middle East correspondent Zach Anders joins me from Tel Aviv, where it is 11:02 p.m. Zach?
Hey, Greta, we've just received word that the Red Cross has transferred over 2 additional bodies that Hamas says they found in these excavation efforts. It's still waiting verification as to the remains of if this is truly a hostage that was held by Hamas, or as we've seen in this release already, potentially the remains of somebody uninvolved. But we'll wait to see what comes out of that. Again, 2 additional bodies transferred to the Red Cross just about an hour ago. And the president, with a post on Truth Social, outlines today what could be a new fight on the grounds to end Hamas. The Post reads in part that numerous of our now great allies in the Middle East and areas surrounding the Middle East have explicitly and strongly, with great enthusiasm, informed me that they would welcome the opportunity at my request to go into Gaza with a heavy force and straighten out Hamas if Hamas continues to act badly in violation of their agreement with us. The Post continues, there is still hope that Hamas will do what is right. If they do not, an end to Hamas will be fast, furious, and brutal. Now, this while Vice President J.D. Vance arrived in Israel this morning. He held a press conference here where he explained a lot of what was said in the president's post, had a lot of questions about what does this look like. Is there going to be an Arab international force that is brought in and instills law and order inside the Gaza Strip? But one of the things J.D. Vance is saying here is that right now we just need to get through these initial stages, let this thing really lock in. Here's Vice President Vance.
There is this weird attitude I've sensed in the American media, in the Western media, where there's almost this desire to root for failure, that every time something bad happens, that every time that there's an act of violence, there's this inclination to say, oh, this is the end of the ceasefire, this is the end of the peace plan. It's not the end. It is, in fact, exactly how this is going to have to happen when you have people who hate each other, who have been fighting against each other for a very long time. We are doing very well. We are in a very good place.
Greta, we've also received confirmation from Prime Minister Netanyahu's office today that he and his staff met with Egypt's intelligence chief in Jerusalem. That's a rare meeting. That's a surprise between Cairo and Jerusalem. We're expecting that the Egyptians are going to play a major role in the coming weeks and send forces inside the Gaza Strip. Just don't know exactly what that's going to look like. And it does appear that, based on what we're hearing, there's reservations from Jerusalem about implementing certain elements of Arab peacekeepers that will come in. There's also ideas floating around, as we heard Jared Kushner speak about today, that potentially, if this does not get solved and Hamas continues to be the dominant force inside this zone that they control, and the IDF is on that outer portion, still inside the Gaza Strip, controlling about 50%, but around the edge, the outskirt, that potentially the reconstruction efforts will go into that IDF-controlled area first. That will be where the aid will flow, and Gazans will have the option to come live under that authority or that administration, and Hamas would be left to languish on the inside portion with a structured way of providing aid, but also making sure that it's not rebuilding, not construction materials for the inner portion of Hamas, as long as they are to control it. But again, these are just the things, all the working parts that we're dealing with here. And one of the other elements that we're hearing from these Arab states is they might be willing to send in their forces to try and restore law and order, but they don't want to go in there to fight Hamas. They're not signing up to be a part of an extension of this war, of this conflict. So again, what does that look like going forward? It's going to be a very big question here in the Middle East. Greta?
Zach, it sounds like, from the fact that the president had that post, which is some saber rattling, basically telling Hamas, do this or else, keep the agreement or not. And you've got statements from other countries saying that they'll send in a force and everything. It sounds like that the agreement is not holding up as securely as people had anticipated. Is there a problem right now?
It's a good question. I think the thing that's maybe folks weren't anticipating is how quickly Hamas would resurge into these areas and crack down. I mean, the executions in the streets are a great example of that. But just tonight, the IDF has informed the international media that they say that Hamas still has a fighting strength of 20,000 men. That's a new estimate that we hadn't had for months. They had been telling us that they had been degraded severely. They weren't giving us a very specific number. Now they think there are 20,000 armed men that still align or are in allegiance to Hamas. We should say that it doesn't mean they're not part of another family clan or another terrorist element, but they're largely marching to the orders of Hamas. So where does that go if you've got the IDF and Israel saying you have 20,000 Hamas men left? That's a lot. That's going to be a very difficult challenge. Hamas is showing no signs of laying down their weapons, so that's the question to ask right now.
And of course, part of the agreement is that they do give up their weapons, which is, in another phase. But, you sort of glossed over, or you mentioned, because probably it's so familiar to you, but you talked about Hamas and the executions, that they are acting just like they did on October 7th with Israelis. Tell me about these executions that Hamas is doing now.
We think that the executions we've been seeing are at about 100 at this point, and that's based on collecting some of the images and the people that we see in those videos. The health ministry in Gaza has been the one that's putting out all these numbers very quickly about the dead from the airstrikes. They're the civil authority that's supposed to post every single death and provide a death certificate inside the Gaza Strip. They didn't do that for any of these executions. So we don't know. And again, this is a ministry that's run by Hamas.
Let me stop you there.
They're not going to.
Let me stop you there. Who is Hamas executing? Who is Hamas executing, and why?
That's the part we don't know for certain. The family clans that rose up to defy their authority, one, we think are involved. We think that there are some elements of, as Hamas has claimed, that they were only killing collaborators, people that were working for and helping Israel. We do believe that there's some of that retribution as well. There's also some elements here, Greta, of Israel before, if you remember in the last 2 months, was supplying some funds and weapons to different clans in the south of the Gaza Strip, designing or manufacturing some kind of opposition to Hamas within Gaza. There's elements of that as well. It's hard to say exactly who they were executing, but we do note that there's some pretty prominent social media personalities in Gaza that have gone silent since the latest rounds of executions.
Well, it certainly seems when I was in Israel right after the war broke out and had an interview with Prime Minister Netanyahu, I don't know if he told me on camera or off, but I certainly remembered it, that his goal was to destroy the ideology of Hamas. Now we have this peace agreement, and that ideology of Hamas, although it's not being directed at Israelis, is directed internally. It shows that, they still are vicious killers, and we'll have to see, what happens. But they're still up to it. It's just who they're executing now. Zach Anders, thank you.
Thanks, Greta.
Coming up, he's not going down without a fight. Who am I talking about? Find out when the record continues.
Just before Charlie Kirk died, he issued a stark warning of terrifying dangers ahead. Charlie wrote this in the foreword for the new book, Pagan Threat, by Pastor Lucas Miles. Charlie said that Pagan Threat could save America and that you must read and share this book. A #1 Amazon bestseller, Pagan Threat is available everywhere. Get Pagan Threat free with Newsmax's special offer and save $30. Go online today and read Charlie's final words.
With today's NBA stars, no lead is safe.
Bet on it. Up 20 used to be a lock.
To Steph, Booker, and Brunson, that's fool's gold.
Got a lead against the Joker? Joke's on you.
Hoopers get hot like pop, pop, pop. And your bet just cashed.
That's money.
New customers bet $5 and get $300 if your bet wins. Paid in bonus bets. Plus, get 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. The crown is yours.
When I first decided to invest in gold, I was a bit nervous and unsure how to start. Luckily, I found Noble Gold Investments. From the very first call, they made investing easy. No pushy sales tactics, no gimmicks, and no confusing free silver offers with hidden fees. Just honest advice tailored to my needs, giving me confidence every step of the way. If you're new to gold investing or want a partner you can trust, visit noblegoldinvestments.com.
There's nothing worse than losing your dog before their time.
That's why I created Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, designed to help dogs with everything from digestive issues to itching, even moving better.
Nature's Blend works because it's freeze-dried. So instead of destroying the nutrients with high heat, they all get right into your dog's body.
Take it from a veterinarian with over 50 years of experience saving dogs' lives. I have never seen a food make this much impact on a dog's health.
For a limited time, get up to 54% off Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, plus a free gift with our special TV offer. Call or go to drmartypets.com/TV.
We have breaking news. This afternoon, the House Judiciary Committee referred former CIA Director John Brennan to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution. This over allegations that the former CIA director knowingly made false statements to Congress about his alleged role in the, quote, Russia collusion hoax. In a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi, House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan argues Brennan, quote, made numerous willfully and intentionally false statements of material fact contradicted by the record established by the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the CIA, end quote. Meanwhile, indicted former FBI Director James Comey wants his 2-count federal indictment dismissed. Yesterday, Comey's legal team filed 2 motions to have his federal charges for allegedly lying during his 2020 congressional testimony tossed out. One motion argues the case is based on a vindictive and unlawful prosecution. Comey's legal team is alleging President Trump ordered prosecutors to charge Comey due to, quote, personal spite. Remember, back in 2017, during President Trump's first term, he fired Comey. Ever since that firing, the two have been sparring. Comey's second motion to dismiss the indictment argues the prosecutor in charge of is illegitimate. That prosecutor is interim U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Lindsay Halligan. Comey's legal team argues that Halligan's appointment violates the Appointments Clause of the Constitution, and that clause requires Senate confirmation for certain federal positions. United States District Court Judge Michael Nachmanoff, who is presiding over the case, has scheduled November 19 for a hearing on those 2 motions. Meanwhile, today, months after Epstein accuser Virginia Giuffre died by suicide, her memoir has been published. The title? Nobody's Girl, a memoir of surviving abuse and fighting for justice. In her memoir, she details her relationship with disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. She also writes of abuse she claims she endured at the hands of both Epstein and Maxwell, as well as multiple powerful men. Giuffre also details what she alleges was an abusive relationship with her own father. In her memoir, published posthumously, Giuffre did not name a lot of her abusers due to her safety and that of her family, but she did mention a number of allegations against Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew is the second son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, and the younger brother to King Charles III. Last week, Prince Andrew gave up his Duke of York title after facing renewed scrutiny over his friendship with Epstein. Now, in Giuffre's memoir, she claims she was forced to have sex with Prince Andrew on 3 separate occasions. The 3 occasions allegedly occurred when she was 17 and 18 years old. The third of the 3 sexual encounters, Giuffre writes, was an orgy with Andrew on Epstein's Island. Giuffre goes on to write that this sexual encounter took place with girls who all appeared to be under the age of 18 and did not speak English. Prince Andrew has denied all allegations, but he did make a financial settlement with Giuffre. The amount reported but not confirmed was about $15 million. Wales commentator and journalist Josh Rom joins me. Nice to see you, Josh, again. And tell me, has this book sort of hit the streets of London yet?
Lovely to be with you again, Greta. So the answer to that question is it is available in a few select bookstores, but we're anticipating that it will have a wide release, I believe, tomorrow. But the story is just getting worse and worse for Prince Andrew, not just because of this memoir, but because of lots of news that's emerging around this memoir. So it's first and foremost, we know that Prince Andrew pretty much disgraced himself with that bombshell interview on the BBC, where he claimed that he cut contact with Jeffrey Epstein in December of 2010. This is, of course, when he said that he flew over to New York to, quote unquote, honorably sever that relationship. However, it's since emerged in leaked emails that actually the pair were in private communication via email in February of 2011, when Prince Andrew said that we are all in this together, and he also claimed that the pair would also, quote unquote, play some more soon. So it's been exposed that although yes, he denies any wrongdoing, it's been at the very least exposed that he is a liar.
Well, he seems, from what and not to be disrespectful, but it seems from reading that he's been a bit of a freeloader in that he hasn't been paying rent. He's staying in a huge mansion, and I think he has paid rent since about 2003. He's been stripped of his titles or abandoned his titles. How much money does he have, or where does he get his money?
Well, this is the thing. Nobody knows how he gets his money because, of course, he hasn't been a working member of the royal family since 2019. So apart from a military pension, which he got, of course, from his services back in the Falklands War, apart from that military pension, we don't know where he's got all of this money. We know that money's been saved up. But one of the reasons why it's been revealed that he hasn't paid rent since 2003 is because he paid upwards of £8 million for repairment costs to the cottage for that lease, which included a £1 million premium to the landlord, the Crown Estate, plus £2.5 million for the option of buying out a future rent. So he hasn't been obligated to pay a huge sum of rent. It's only that peppercorn rent, which is effectively nothing, a symbolic payment to the Crown Estate. But what he does need to do in order to keep the house, he needs to pay for the upkeep of the house, which includes exterior stonework every 5 years and painting the interior every 7 years. And there's also different terms. For example, helicopters can't land within the grounds. No gambling is also allowed on the premises. However, the optics for the royal family are terrible when there is a prince who is not working, who, by the way, the public are absolutely disgusted by the story. The current narrative is the royal family haven't gone far enough. Prince Andrew it's not going far enough to just simply relinquish his titles, bearing in mind they're still there. The public and several MPs in Parliament want Prince Andrew to be stripped of those titles completely. But the optics does not look good that there is this prince, even though he isn't working, living in splendor whilst he brought the royal family into disrepute through his lies in that bombshell interview.
Do his children have a title? And if he gets stripped of his title or voluntarily relinquishes it, do they lose their titles?
Well, this is what's been speculated around royal circles. It's been very much speculated. I can't confirm or deny, but I have heard this from a few sources, that Prince Andrew may have made a deal with the royal family, with Prince William and His Majesty the King, to relinquish his own titles in exchange for Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie to retain those York titles. Because bearing in mind, Princess Beatrice and Eugenie, they haven't done anything wrong here. It's obviously that both of their parents, which includes Sarah Ferguson, of course, have been exposed of being liars. But these poor girls, although they do have normal jobs, they're not necessarily senior working members of the royal family. They do undertake duties, and it's kind of a little, I would say, a little bit unfair on them that their own reputations have been sullied purely through guilt by association with their parents. So for the moment, Princess Beatrice and Eugenie do still have those titles.
What? So he gives up his title. I mean, I know it's embarrassing or shameful. Is there anything more to that? I mean, he gives up his title and that's it?
Well, this is the thing, because he's given up his title, quote unquote, relinquished his title, but they are still in existence. So, you know, he's not going to use them and he's not going to be known by them, but there is still that little bit of a link there, which people think, no. He should absolutely, the royal family should do more in going as far as to completely sever those links, bring the Act of Parliament through, completely strip him, basically forcing him to live in exile. That is what I think a lot of MPs have said that they want. For example, a big Tory MP known as Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, the Westminster leader of the Scottish National Parties. They have laid a motion in Parliament today to kind of begin that legislation. So that's the thing. I think people want to see the royal family taking a more proactive approach.
One last question. Whatever happened to Prince Edward, the other brother of Prince King Charles, Prince Andrew, and Prince Edward? I don't read much about Prince Edward.
Well, that's a good thing, Greta, because it means that he isn't drawing attention to himself and he's doing the role in which he was supposed to, quietly supporting his older brother, His Majesty the King. I will say, when it comes to Royal Lodge and this lease with the Crown Estate, there is precedent with Prince Edward's own property, Bagshot Park, back when he took a 50-year lease in 1998, obviously paying a far less upfront sum and paying far less rent than Prince Andrew does on this property. But that's the thing. Prince Edward and his wife are known to be very hardworking members of the royal family, alongside Princess Anne, doing duties in the background, not really drawing attention to themselves. That's effectively the role of a younger sibling of the sovereign, is just to support the monarch. So they're effectively, by not reading about it, that's the one piece of good news for the royal family.
Josh Rom, as always, thank you.
Thanks so much, Greta.
Coming up, who's footing the bill for the new $250 million White House ballroom? That when the record continues.
When Betty and George turned 50, they figured out that switching 2 unlimited lines from big wireless to consumer cellular could save people up to $600 a year. So they made the switch and started splurging on date night. And it became their favorite night. No, don't you dare. It's an acquired taste. See how we can cut your bill. If you're over 50, get 2 unlimited lines for $30 each. Call Consumer Cellular.
Back in the day, you bet sinners just to get boards.
Word.
Now I take them to make threes.
Today's NBA stars, everybody does everything.
Ant-Man, SGA, Luka, dudes playing 1 through 5.
Bigs dishing out like family dinner.
Woo! Got me smashing triple doubles. Shaq, basketball, not burgers.
New customers bet $5 and get $300 if your bet wins. Paid in bonus bets. Plus, get 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. The crown is yours.
An official message from Medicare.
Medicare plans change from one year to the next. And this year, it's important for you to review your current coverage and compare all your options during Medicare open enrollment. Compare health plans. Compare drug coverage. Compare costs. See if you can save. And make sure your drugs are covered. Open enrollment ends December 7th. Compare plans now at Medicare.gov.
Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, my name is Damian Clark. And if you have both Medicare and Medicaid, I have some really encouraging news that you'll definitely want to hear. Depending on the plans available in your area, you may be eligible to get extra benefits with the Humana Medicare Advantage Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan. These plans have a $0 monthly plan premium. Most plans include the Humana Healthy Options Allowance. Get over $1,000 a year. That's $85 a month to help pay for covered over-the-counter items, like vitamins, pain relievers, first aid supplies, and more. The Healthy Options allowance is loaded onto a prepaid card each month, and whatever you don't spend carries over from each month. Call today to learn about all the items covered. You could have $0 copays on hundreds of prescriptions all year long, including select brand name drugs. All plans have $0 copays for covered preventive dental services, which include 2 free cleanings a year, as well as coverage towards fillings. They also have vision coverage, including vision exams and a yearly allowance towards eyewear, such as lenses or contacts. And hearing coverage, which includes routine hearing exams and coverage towards hearing aids. Plus, your doctor, hospital, and pharmacy may already be part of our large Humana networks. So call the number on your screen now to speak with a licensed Humana sales agent. Wouldn't you love benefits like a monthly allowance to help pay for covered over-the-counter items? So if you have Medicare and Medicaid, call the number on your screen now and speak with a licensed Humana sales agent. If you're eligible, they can even help enroll you over the phone in a Humana Medicare Advantage dual eligible special needs plan. And remember, annual enrollment ends on December 7th. So call now. Humana, a more human way to healthcare.
The demolition of the White House East Wing has begun to make room for a $250 million, 90,000 square foot ballroom. That $250 million, it's not taxpayer dollars, but rather funds donated by private citizens and the president himself. Today, President Donald Trump spoke about the ballroom.
Building a world-class ballroom. You know, for 150 years, they've wanted a ballroom here. We don't have a ballroom. We have a little cocktail area, but we don't have a ballroom. The East Room, it's called, is a very small cocktail area. It holds about 88 people if it's tight. And I said, if I do this again, I'm going to get a ballroom built, and we're putting up our own money. With the government is paying for nothing. You probably hear the beautiful sound of construction to the back. You hear that sound? Oh, that's music to my ears. I love that sound. Other people don't like it. I love it, Josh. I think when I hear that sound, it reminds me of money. In this case, it reminds me of lack of money because I'm paying for it, so it's the opposite. But it's going to be one of the most beautiful ballrooms anywhere in the world.
This is not the first major project that has taken place at the White House. Many presidents have made renovations to the White House. In 1902, then-President Theodore Roosevelt built the West Wing. In 1909, then-President William Howard Taft constructed the Oval Office. In 1933, then-President Franklin D. Roosevelt installed an indoor pool at the White House. FDR used the indoor pool for his physical therapy to help manage his polio. In 1970, then-President Richard Nixon paved over the indoor pool and turned it into the White House press room. In 1948, then-President Harry Truman and his family moved out of the White House and into the Blair House across the street. The Blair House is the guest house for heads of state who visit the White House. Truman moved to the Blair House because the entire White House was gutted and rebuilt. The exterior walls were all that remained of the original White House. And a recent renovation, 2009, then-President Barack Obama converted the White House tennis court into a full-court basketball court. And these are just a few of the many renovations that have taken place at the White House over the years. And in any minute, President Trump will host an event at the White House to celebrate Diwali. That is the Hindu festival of lights. We're going to keep an eye on the White House. We're going to take you there live once we see the president. Meanwhile, earlier today, President Trump met with Senate Republicans at the White House. He hosted a lunch in the newly renovated Rose Garden. One topic of discussion, the government shutdown. We are now on day 21. We still do not have any idea when it will reopen. Majority Leader Senator John Thune says the Senate will keep voting until the government is voted open. Something else is uncertain. President Trump's planned meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. They were supposed to meet soon in Hungary. The actual date was never made public, but today, according to the Associated Press, citing an anonymous source, and you know how I feel about anonymous sources, I just hate them, but according to the anonymous source, the Trump-Putin summit is on hold. Why? No one knows, so the plot thickens. Former Senator from Pennsylvania and senior political analyst, Senator Rick Santorum, joins me. Nice to see you, Senator. And before we get to the shutdown, do you have any thoughts why this meeting that we heard so much about between Putin and Trump is now at least put on hold?
Well, I mean, I think Putin has made it pretty clear that he's not really changing any of his objectives when it comes to Ukraine, and I don't think he really sees any advantage to him meeting with Trump to frustrate Trump. I think he's a little concerned that the more he angers Trump, what we saw in Israel with Hamas could happen in Ukraine. That the more that he digs his heels in, that Putin digs his heels in, particularly in a meeting like that, where the two of them, there's some expectation that there's going to be something good that comes out of that meeting. We saw that in the past where things haven't, and Trump sort of ups the ante afterwards. So I think he probably is trying to avoid any kind of direct confrontation, which could spur Trump to do something more dramatic in support of Ukraine.
Well, Trump is a very different president, as we all know. He doesn't take sides so much. I mean, it's not a question of who's right or who's wrong. It's how do you stop the killing? That seems to be his foreign policy. Is how do you just stop this? And he, we see what he's done in the Middle East, and he's turned his attention. He always talks about how many people die each day in Ukraine, soldiers, and whether it's Ukrainian or Russian. And it seems like it just seems like Putin doesn't want to negotiate. He doesn't want a deal. He wants everything. And at that point, there's nothing to negotiate.
I think that's right. And I think you're right, Greta, exactly. Most people would not use this term to describe Donald Trump, but I think it really fits, which he's a humanitarian. I mean, he's someone who really does try to improve the quality of life. It's obviously Make America Great Again is all about that, is trying to improve the quality of life of Americans here. When he sees, poverty, when he sees death and destruction, that's something that really upsets him. And as the leader of the free world, which I think he now recognizes he really is, he feels some responsibility for that. And because if you have an opportunity to do something about it, you don't, then in a sense you own it a little bit. And I think Donald Trump wants to be seen as someone who's done everything he can to try to alleviate suffering and death in the world.
You speak about him being a humanitarian. I remember years ago, before he was president, I was sitting in my office at the Fox News Channel, and he called me and asked me for the address of somebody, someone I'd reported about who was really down and out. And I said, I have no idea what his address is. And I said, why? He said, well, I want to give him a little something. He needs a little head start. He needs a little help. And I thought, he said, I'll tell you what. He said, I'll tell you what. I'll send you a check. Boom, hangs up. The next day, and tells me to find him. The next day I received in the mail, this is before Donald Trump was running for president, a couple years before, I received in the mail a check made out to that person who was down and out for $25,000. And I then, of course, had to go find the person, which was not particularly easy because the person was that down and out. But you speak about, he's so gruff, and he uses such, coarse language, and he does things, he says pretty mean things sometimes. But people who have been around him long enough have seen him do these sort of, he never got any credit for that. There was nothing in it for him. It wasn't a big public story. But you speak about it, he doesn't like people being hurt. You see it over and over again with this man.
Yeah, that's why you see the intense loyalty of the people around Trump, because they see that side of him that the public, that you've just described, that the public doesn't see. And whether it's friends or other people they've witnessed him doing these types of things, or whether they're actually the recipients of it themselves, they know that side of the man is real, and it creates an intense loyalty.
Yeah, and as I said, as I got the FedEx the next day and I had to go find the guy, and I don't know how much time I spent trying to track this guy down, but I did successfully. But if you don't deal with him, if Hamas doesn't play it straight, he's going to act just like he did with Iran and helping Netanyahu with the nuclear sites. If Putin doesn't come around, I would expect him to give those Tomahawk missiles or sell them to Ukraine, and that does change the game in Ukraine. So he does keep. Wait, hold on one second, because the president has entered the Oval Office and he's speaking. Sure. He's hosting that Diwali event.
Look at all of it. Wow, look at the people, huh? It's seriously the biggest business people anywhere in the world, so I think it's a great tribute. Whatever they're teaching you well, right? Thank you very much. You're welcome to the White House as we celebrate Diwali, because they said there has to be a very heavy emphasis on the V, Diwali, the beautiful Hindu festival of lights, and that's what it is. It's a great festival, and it's amazing people. I'm pleased to be joined by the Director of the National Intelligence and a woman that's done a fantastic job, Tulsi Gabbard, wherever you may be, Tulsi. Hi, Tulsi. FBI Director Kash Patel, who's really hitting his stride. Cash, where's Cash?
Right here, sir.
He's hitting his stride. That's the way we like it. Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon. Harmeet?
I'm right here, sir.
Hi, Harmeet. And Pastor Paula White. She's been fantastic. She's been with us right from the beginning. We're greatly honored to be joined by the Indian Ambassador to the United States, Vinay Quatru. And that's very nice. Pronounce it perfectly. That's what. Oh, I wasn't too far off there. And his wonderful wife. And thank you very much. It's a great honor to have you. As well as our new ambassador to India. This is a nice, easy name, Sergio Gore. Sergio, congratulations, Sergio. You're going to do a fantastic job. And thanks as well to incredible Indian American business leaders, the biggest in the world, really. If you look at these companies, what they've done, the biggest in the world. CEO of IBM, Arvind Krishna, and Arvind, congratulations. I know you're working hard on a couple of jobs that I'm watching, and good luck with them, right? Yes. Good luck. It's amazing what you've done. Chairman and CEO of Adobe, and that Adobe is big stuff, and that's Shantanu Narayan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shantanu. Nice to see you. Thank you very much. CEO of Micron Technology, we know what that is, Sanjay Marotta. Sanjay, nice to see you again. And CEO of Palo Alto Networks, Nikesh Arora. And I want to thank you very much for, and great success. It's a hell of a group of people. And in addition to that, we have a lot of other tremendously successful people gathered. On behalf of all Americans, let me also extend our warmest wishes to the people of India. I just spoke to your Prime Minister today. We had a great conversation. We talk about trade, we talk about a lot of things, but mostly the world of trade. He's very interested in that. Although we did talk a little while ago about let's have no wars with Pakistan. And I think the fact that trade was involved, I was able to talk about that. And we have no war with Pakistan and India, and that was a very, very good thing. But he's a great person, and he's become a great friend of mine over the years. In a few moments, we'll light the...
President Trump has gone from the lunch with the Republicans. Now you're watching him at holding a Diwali event. He's hosting it in the Oval Office. We're going to continue to monitor that event and bring you any news that happens during the event. Coming up, though, drugs, oil, terrorists. Guess who we're talking about? That answer when the record continues.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
I am Mr. H, owner of Immuno 150, possibly the most complete and best nutritional supplement in the world, bar none. Now, it has propelled me to 91 years of age, and my wife Shirley to 82. Both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, doing everything we did many years ago. All because of Immuno 150, and it can do the very same thing for you. Try it for 90 days so you can experience the difference it can make in your life. Nothing on the market can compete with the way we blend 70 plant-derived colloidal minerals with 80 very carefully selected nutrients. You'll be surprised if you take the recommended dose of Immuno 150 for 3 months. Place your order now so that you can be with us many years from now. Thank you and God bless.
AI company Palantir makes critical decisions for governments around the world. In 2019, Palantir bought $50 million in gold in case of black swan events. Not surprising what followed. In 2020, a pandemic shut down the global economy. And in 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. In 2023, we had a regional banking collapse. And in 2025, could a 1929 market crash be the final straw? Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 888-528-4290 before it's too late. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer 8 years in a row, home of the No Fee for Life IRA. Patriot Gold Group is patriots protecting patriots. Call now, 888-528-4290.
Derriere, caboose, booty, badunkadunk. No matter what you call it, if you have hemorrhoids, your tushy is no laughing matter. So don't use a cream that treats your rear end like a joke. Get serious relief with Recticare Advanced Hemorrhoidal Cream. Recticare Advanced is seriously effective with 2 powerful medicines for rapid dual-action relief, soothing the uncomfortable swelling, itching, and pain of your hemorrhoids. For serious hemorrhoid relief for your buns, get Recticare Advanced.
When an earache strikes, you need relief fast. Introducing Earache RX from Dr. Easy, the makers of Wax RX. Not just another eardrop, Earache RX is real medicine with 4% lidocaine. Earache RX has the maximum strength available without a prescription. Strong enough for adults, yet gentle enough for kids. Earache RX gives you fast relief that starts working on contact. Don't wait for an earache to strike. Get the power of real medicine. Get Earache RX at these fine retailers.
As we've been reporting, the United States has been launching strikes on suspected narco-traffickers headed to our country. The drug boats are taken out near the waters of Venezuela. The United States has recently beefed up its military presence in the region. That includes warships, troops, special ops, and Air Force patrols. But why might the U.S. be interested in Venezuela besides being a transit hub for drugs and human trafficking? Well, Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserves, more oil than Saudi Arabia. In 2024, according to the United States Energy Information Administration, the U.S. imported about 220,000 barrels of oil per day from Venezuela. That means Venezuela was the 4th largest supplier of crude oil to the United States. But besides oil to the United States pays close attention to Venezuela's politics. Venezuela, under President Nicolas Maduro, is running a socialist government. Maduro has very close ties to U.S. adversaries, including Cuba, China, Russia, and Iran. Not only that, Venezuela under Maduro is believed to be a safe haven for Hezbollah. Yes, Hezbollah, that Iran-backed terror group from Lebanon. Just today, a Senate committee held a hearing on Hezbollah's drug trafficking operations in Latin America. By the way, at its closest points, Venezuela is only 1,050 miles from Key West, Florida. Georgia Republican and member of the House Armed Services and Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Rich McCormick, joins me. Nice to see you, sir.
Great to be with you, Ted.
Anyone objecting on Capitol Hill to President Trump hitting these ships coming out of Venezuela?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Democrats did, because they seem to be against everything that Trump endorses. I think this is a great thing. The sad thing is, in 1990, when I joined the Marine Corps, we used to train with Venezuelan Marines. We had them going through school with us. I mean, they were a close ally. They're the 2nd highest GDP per capita in the world. And now look at them. One president basically took them from that pinnacle to where they're at right now, and destitute, where they're literally eating zoo animals. And they have, even though they have all this oil and all this income, they can't get it right because socialism just does not work. And now it's not even socialism, it's just a dictatorship.
Well, that's why so many people walk the Darien Gap from Venezuela, where there's so many Venezuelans in the United States. A lot of them, I know, obviously immigration has been a huge issue in this country, illegal immigration, I should add, but a lot of them were from Venezuela.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of Venezuelan criminals were released from their jails and were smuggled up here. Literally, people bragging about how many murders they did that were allowed into America by the Biden administration, who have done real harm to Americans, and that's really scary.
Do you have any idea what the government does to sort of determine whether these boats are really narco smugglers?
So a lot of this is due with our intelligence gathering capabilities. Obviously, we don't take out people just based on a hunch. They get confirmation from real intel on what these boats have on board. Like he knew with the submarine, for example, it had mostly fentanyl, bad guys. We knew what gangs they belonged to, and we take out the bad guys. You had to be very careful in selection. When we used to be on floats and we'd have an idea what we're going to take down a ship like that we couldn't even talk about, we had real live intelligence. If we had any doubt at all, it would be called off. So these are confirmed targets. These aren't just we hope they're bad guys.
Why don't we, there's no effort to contact them and board them? I mean, in the old days, you could contact, if they have a flag from Venezuela, you call Venezuela and say, can I board it? Or from Panama,
sure, you can.
And ask to board it. But are we attempting to board any of these, or we just make the determination these are bad and boom, they're gone?
And we've done it in the past. Two things can happen. First of all, they can run and they can get away and go back, and they go back into international waters, they're home free. Or they can shoot back and kill our Marines and our sailors or SEALs or whomever is trying to board that ship. Now you have a very dangerous situation. The question is, are you willing to risk lives to take somebody who you know is smuggling jail? Now you're going to put them in jail, in our jail system, and eventually get them back there. The expense and the danger to our troops versus just taking out bad guys who are literally coming here that have caused hundreds of thousands of deaths, more than all the wars we've ever fought together. When you start combining all the deaths that have happened from fentanyl and overdosing and drugs and the gang wars in the inner cities, if you look at the mortality and morbidity of a male black man in America, and I got this from Dr. Satcher when I was a student at Morehouse, it declined dramatically with the cocaine wars with crack cocaine, and it's only escalated with this sort of warfare that they're basically having on us.
Well, we'll lose about 80,000 a year on fentanyl, maybe a little bit more, and that's more than all the years in Vietnam, which is, you know, the sort of the tag that everybody uses. That's how many people die every year from fentanyl. And if someone coming in over the border shooting 80,000 people would certainly act in a different way. So what do you think the special ops people are doing in Venezuela? They're getting the information for these drug smugglers?
I don't want to even tilt our hand, really. I mean, we do a really bad job in America of tilting our hand at what we've done. Operation Pineapple is a perfect example. We go in, we smuggle people out, and then we tell them how we do it. Why would we tell anybody what we're doing?
But why would we be there? I mean, what is our purpose? Is the purpose to get intelligence so we know which boats to take out? Is that the purpose, would you think?
It probably has something to do with that. I think it's multifactorial. These guys, whether you talk about the Green Berets, you talk about SEALs, you talk about Delta Force, they're very good at what they do, collecting information.
Boy, they stand out, though. But they would stand out in Venezuela.
They have a good way of keeping in the shadows. These guys are remember, these guys are the same guys that have been over in Pakistan, tracking down Osama bin Laden. These are the same guys who've been over in Iraq. They've been in multiple geographic locations, knowing multiple language, having great ways to get in. But once again, we don't want to tilt our hand. We don't want to tell people what we do. We're just going to do it.
I imagine the Venezuelans who are in Venezuela would like to see a regime change of some sort.
For sure.
I mean, Machado, who was the woman she's been on our show, who really beat Maduro a year ago, July, in the election. I think they'd probably like to see her. I mean, they have a population that is very discontented with Maduro because there's no money there. The inflation is so high. I mean, it's just a terrible place to live.
And I think you have the same thing going on in Brazil and other places in South America. This is a very dangerous place to live right now. I think Argentina got it right. I was with the ambassador last night from Argentina. Look what they're doing. They're transforming their nation into a powerhouse. So they set the example for South America on what could be done, because Venezuela is an absolute wreck. And we want to make sure the Monroe Doctrine is actually reinstituted and secures this hemisphere for the benefit of America.
Congressman Rich McCormick, thank you, sir. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too.
Japan has a first. Its first female prime minister has been elected, 64-year-old Sanae Takeuchi. She is conservative and wants Japan to have a stronger military, more fiscal spending for growth, and tougher immigration policy. She opposes women keeping their maiden names after marriage, as well as same-sex marriage. She calls herself a workaholic. She has admired former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. As a student, and this is particularly interesting, I think, Takeuchi was a drummer in a heavy metal band, and she rode a motorcycle. Coming up, it's our video of the day, and it's something you will need to see to believe. That video when the record continues.
I'm Guy Fieri, and I'm asking for your help in supporting the Tunnel to Towers Foundation as it continues to pay off the mortgages for fallen first responders and Gold Star families who have died in the line of duty and left behind young children. Not only that, but they are also building mortgage-free smart homes for catastrophically injured service members and have recently committed to eradicating homelessness amongst our veterans. We ask you to join us on our mission to do good. Go to T2T.org and donate today.
With today's NBA stars, no lead is safe.
Bet on it. Up 20 used to be a lock.
To Steph, Booker, and Brunson, that's fool's gold.
Got a lead against the Joker? Joke's on you.
Hoopers get hot like pot, pot, pot. And your bet just cashed.
That's money.
New customers bet $5 and get $300 if your bet wins. Paid in bonus bets. Plus, get 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. The crown is yours.
Mother Nature never takes a day off, and neither does LeafGuard. LeafGuard, the only seamless one-piece rainwater management system with a clog-free guarantee. In most cases, we can install LeafGuard in less than a day, and it comes with a lifetime transferable warranty. Call now for 10% off LeafGuard, a $100 Visa gift card with purchase, and a $50 gift card with estimate. Plus, call during this program for our double savings sale. Double your savings to 20% off a complete LeafGuard system. Double your bonus to a $200 Visa gift card with purchase. And if you call now, we'll double your free gift to a $100 gift card with estimate. And once you get LeafGuard, you'll have more time to go on vacation. Be one of the first 50 homeowners who call now will receive a vacation voucher with purchase of a complete LeafGuard system. Call now to take advantage of our double savings sale. Don't deal with those old gutters any longer. Call now for LeafGuard.
LeafGuard handled it great. We had an awful lot of rain the last couple of days, and we didn't get any clogs at all. All of the rain just went right down through the gutters. All the pine needles slid right off.
LeafGuard works so well that it's earned the Good Housekeeping seal 20 years in a row. Don't deal with those old gutters any longer. Call during this program and take advantage of our double savings sale. Double your savings to 20% off a complete LeafGuard system, and double your bonus to a $200 Visa gift card with purchase. And remember, with LeafGuard, the top's not a cover, it's part of the gutter, and it comes with a clog-free guarantee. And if you call now, we're going to double your free gift. Receive a $100 gift card with your in-home estimate. And the first 50 homeowners who call will receive a vacation voucher with LeafGuard purchase. Call now to take advantage of our double savings sale. Don't deal with those old gutters any longer. Call now for LeafGuard.
Talk about a huge misunderstanding. Last night, an American Airlines flight bound for Los Angeles was forced to make an emergency landing. Why? Well, pilots heard someone banging on the cockpit door. The flight operated by SkyWest Airlines departed from Omaha, Nebraska at 6:41 p.m. local time, but almost immediately after takeoff, the flight turned around and landed just 18 minutes later. Now, it turns out there was a problem with the plane's interphone system. The flight attendants began knocking on the cockpit door to alert the pilots, but because the pilots could not reach the flight crew, they thought something was wrong and made an emergency landing. And speaking of airlines, yesterday, October 20th, was Air Traffic Controller Day. The day marks the anniversary of the founding of the International Federation of Air Traffic Controllers Association. That association was founded in 1961. To celebrate the day, Flight Radar 24, an internet-based service that shows real-time aircraft flight tracking information, posted this picture on X. The picture shows a snapshot of just some of the flights that took off yesterday and were in the air. Pretty cool, isn't it? Looks sort of dangerous, though, I must admit. This is something you will need to see to believe. 65-year-old Parkinson's patient Denise Bacon played the clarinet during her brain surgery. Like I said, you're going to need to see it to believe it. Now you will. So why is she playing the clarinet during brain surgery? Well, she's actually helping the neurosurgeons implant electrodes into her brain. The surgery, called deep brain stimulation surgery, involves sending electrical impulses to specific brain regions to reduce Parkinson's symptoms. The team used her live musical feedback to implant the electrodes. It's amazing, isn't it? Coming up, no shirt, no hooves, no service. And yes, we said hooves, or I said hooves. We'll show you when the record continues.